East Coast of the United States. I have no idea what time it is down and under, but it is time for Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave
and Mecky
on WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, where it's more than just radio, so jump into the chat room if you can. This is show number 426.
620 and 400.
It's on air, online, and on your smart device, so grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on the Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. If you missed Solaris' show with David Dubine, the topic was Grand Solar Minimum. Now, I only caught the end of it, but as usual, awesome show, always great guests. Oh my goodness. And you're doing yourself a disservice by not catching Solaris' shows. But if you did happen to miss it, guess what? It's real easy. Oh, and by the way, thanks, Ro. If it's only cost $5 US to jump into the archives and grab not just her shows, our shows, but all of the host shows. And you know what? It makes a big difference. You can listen in your own time. You don't have to catch it live. And you know, I do that with a couple of good shows, and I get to listen in my own time. I really like that. Isn't that what we all do now? Isn't that the ISO thing, Mecky? You just stack them up and watch them when you can, right?
It's binging. They're really bad in any other context.
Yeah, sure it is. Yeah. Like when I said to my doctor, I think I binge alcohol. He goes, "Oh, I binge television. Not so bad." We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, and where I live it's the Dark and Jung people, and Mecky.
It is the Daruk people, and the Daruk people.
And we pay our respects, honestly and sincerely, to the elders past, present and emerging. Mecky, another crazy week. I've just got to close this door because the dog is freaking out. It's fretting because it can't come in the door. Just give me a second.
Yes. You close that door. Yes, no, crazy week it has been. Crazy dogs notwithstanding. In a lot of countries, the restrictions around the coronavirus isolation have been lifted somewhat. In Australia, 10 people can now congregate in a restaurant. You know, we can go back to parks. I think they opened gyms, which is crazy, really. Kids are going back at least one day of school, I've been told. Officers are trying to come back one day a week as well, or on a rotational shift basis. In my opinion, too early, but of course there's a problem. Then the problem here is money, right? And this is the economic burden that this has caused. I mean, the health burden is bad enough. I mean, you know, it's some almost 5 million people, almost 5 million confirmed cases. So these are people that have been tested. We know they have it. We know that 300,000, in excess of 300,000 people have passed away from it. Okay, again, people that have been tested, we know that's the case. In my opinion, that number is significantly higher due to the related coronavirus conditions, if you will. Right? There's a lot of conditions that are such as aneurysms, such as heart attacks, such as strokes. 100% correct. Literally, I would say anything that has in any way to do with blood flow, anything that has in any way to do with your, pulmonary system, I would call suspicious at this point. The cardiovascular, sure, but definitely your pulmonary system and anything to do with anything blood related, right? So anything like blood clots, thickening of blood, things like that, or even inflammations of the blood or organs and so forth, like Kawasaki disease and other things as well. So there are a lot of things, I'm just looking at these numbers, and I don't want to be alarmist, but just over the last 24-hour period, there were another 21,000 people diagnosed in the States, 15,000 in Brazil, Russia another 10,000. I'm not seeing the flattening, okay, from the infection point of view, and in that last 24-hour period, which is actually not a bad number, we only had 4,000 fatalities across the world. Not bad. you know, every fatality is of course a a tragedy at the very least, but certainly the numbers have improved significantly in that respect. In Australia, we're now number 51 or 52, I think, Dave.
Yeah.
From number 51. We had 17 extra cases, 98 fatalities, and active right now we have active 576 cases with 16 in critical. I would say ICU. But how's your week been?
Yeah, that's funny. How'd I come off the back of that? I'd like to just point out some other things. So the USA is still exponential. Russia is exponential. Brazil, exponential. Linear is the United Kingdom still. There's very few people, Mickey, down in the 50 club.
Yeah. Between
a 50 and 100. Very few people there. Most of those have migrated across to the 100 or the 1,000 club. And we're seeing these numbers increase. And I've got a graphic up at the moment. And the
yes. Yeah.
So when I'm seeing these straight lines or the hockey sticks going straight up, it's still beyond me as to why people aren't doing anything about it. Those governments, like Panama, for instance, that's just going straight up. And I wonder how they're going to be affected. And now, Mecca, you stated, and you've said rightfully, of course, because they're starting to open up this country. They haven't opened up. You know, the East and West states, there's a line down the middle.
Yes.
Where the Northern Territory, Western Australia and South Australia basically form the 2/3 majority almost of the... It's not quite half, and it's maybe not 2/3, but it's in the middle there. It's like... And that whole western side of the continent has decided to isolate the eastern side. I didn't think we'd see that. I thought we'd have, you know, randomness of how it would play out. But when you delete from our curves all of those that have arrived back from overseas and those who came back from ships and were emergency flown back to Australia because they're citizens, doesn't matter where you were in the world and you came back to this country, pretty much we've had day on, day in, day out. Do you like that? I used three different... I only wanted two of them. I only wanted two. And day in, day out, we've seen about maybe 15 to 25 community spread new tested people. So the abattoir, folks at the abattoir had it. One of those children worked at McDonald's and it gave a whole McDonald's outlet. Everybody there, it spread to everybody. Mm-hmm. That's pretty bad. And remember, they were doing contactless as well, and they managed with the contact tracing to find that one of those children were one of the kids of the abattoir that was also infected. So luckily they've been put on 2-week isolation and see what happens. Yeah. But as we've already know, you can have it and then you can no longer present with it from a test point of view, but you're still contagious. After your symptoms go away, you're still contagious. Even before your symptoms show, it's asymptomatic. Yeah. What is by being able to relax, Mecky, I suppose is my question here, the 2 only now to 10 people that can be congregated in a single place, still showing that same distancing that we're supposed to have been still doing. But you know what, Mecky, I went to the local store, and people had just abandoned it entirely.
Yeah, because it's been tough. It's been 2 months almost, right? It's been 2-3 months now.
Yeah.
And throwing caution to the wind. We're going to be okay. Our numbers are good. Look, it's a two-sided coin here. Like there's 17 countries today that are infection-free in the world, right? Interestingly, most of them are islands, right? Not so interesting. The interesting bit is that one of the countries is Cambodia. Or Kampuchea, which I found astounding, right smack bang in the middle of Southeast Asia. But nonetheless, there we are. Eritrea as well, infection free. So 17 about countries now, but having said that, there are still significant levels of infection in other countries, and even in Australia, I would say we probably have more people infected than we know, simply because you can't test everybody, and like Dave just pointed out correctly, the disease doesn't present. And look, I'm not going to go into the debate here, because I don't know. I simply don't know around. Is this a virus? Is it not the virus? Is it related to 5G? I'm not going there because I just don't know. Okay, so completely pointless to make comments around it, because, like I said, I'm not going there. I know there's something happening in the world. I know people are dying. I know people are sick, and I know things are locked down. That's a fact. What causes it? I'm not putting up for debate here. What I do know is that the medical professionals that I know here in Australia have told me 8 weeks ago, we would have been catastrophically unprepared. We would have been in a really bad situation. We would have gone the way of New York, essentially. Today, and as of the start of last week, we are in a much better place, Dave. We have the right number of ventilators. We have ICU capacity. One of our friends in the family, she's an oncologist, and her ward has been turned into an ICU ward for coronavirus patients. So that's the way we've gone. We are prepared. We are good. Now that doesn't mean we should throw caution to the wind. There is no cure yet. There is no vaccine, if in fact it is this virus. So going and easing restrictions and statements like the European ministers or the EU saying, "Oh, we're going to have an open summer. The EU is going to be open for the summer holidays."
Good luck with that.
Yeah, and Trump as well. I mean, I neither love nor hate the guy. I think he's done a good job. He's done a bad job on other things, but he's like any other person. But he said he's going to be open by Easter, but clearly that never happened, and I don't think we're going to be open anytime soon in the States. Anyway, that's just my 10 cents here.
Well, even if they happen to, right? Even if America does open back up, at least those that haven't got, a cluster of infected cases growing. Well, then, I think you're going to have to take the good with the bad if you want your economy not to suffer. What do? I think you convert the economy into a new economy. That's what I think. You should see, Mackie, where I live.
Already happening. I think the economy.
I agree. Yeah, I know the new economy is here, but the amount of entrepreneurial changes to people's businesses, like my old regular coffee van that I used to come to the factory that I used to work at. He just started putting on Facebook, "I'm going to be at this location at this time. Come meet me." It's okay. You're allowed one person. If a business was open during the most severe of our lockdown, you could attend the business, and that was allowed. So he would advertise where he was going to be at these different times, not going to businesses because they weren't open. He was also advertising the sale of the coffee beans, because he gets them at like a trade price. So you could still buy the coffee even though you couldn't get to his van. That's pretty cool. So we're seeing a whole bunch of this. So one of the pizza stores, Mickey, that all the tables and chairs are packed away, and the whole store is open internally, but it's closed to the public, and they just have a desk across the door and the FPOS, and they're doing all the transactions there. They've moved it all to the front door, and you've got to wait outside. And I was joking with one of my friends, Becky. I actually did an interview on one of my friend's shows yesterday morning, and we were saying just how alike the lockdowns and all of this looked like Eastern Bloc countries during the height of communism, with the queue going round the corner, only limited things on the shelves.
Yeah, but the problem there is
it's a different situation entirely.
Yeah,
but I know I get it, but we were likening that experience of having to wait in a queue to be able to enter a store because it's only got a certain amount of cubic meters or whatever, square meters, so only a certain amount of people could be in the store at once, and when you get inside, not all the things are there that you want, and so and we laughed and joked about it. But I wonder if we don't come out of this in this single effort, in the single case where we're all allowed you know, back to normal again as whatever it takes, and whatever that means to the virus spread. Even if it goes exponential again, even Neki, if we get this second wave, and this second wave is worse.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the second waves usually are.
It is, yeah, because your complacencies come, like in the beginning you were so fearful of it. Who cares now, right? I didn't get sick last time.
Yeah. That's the way it looks. This is really the problem, right? And while I appreciate the comparison as well, the thing there is the reason the communist Eastern Bloc countries were in such a bad state is because they had a planned economy, a centralized planned economy, which was completely mismanaged and not planned at all. I went and I had relatives in
That's the irony.
Yeah, my family was split in half essentially in Europe, right? Some in Poland, some in Eastern Germany. And then the rest of us in West Germany.
They did a hard time in Eastern Germany.
Yeah, it was tough. And again, it was a funny thing. I mean, but the thing is this, right? And maybe that's more pertinent to what you were discussing yesterday. People get used to things.
Yeah.
So you have a certain way of living, and that's good. And then you go and there you are, and wonderful. And then something changes, and before you know it, after a certain period of pain, a certain period of mourning, even for the old state of affairs, you get used to it. All of a sudden, that new way of life is your accepted way of life, the one you've become used to now. The new normal. Well, yeah, let's call it the new normal, right? Even though that's a much abused phrase these days, and this is similar. And this fear mongering, of course, the fear is based on reality, and I know the numbers are horrendous, but if it hits you, it's certainly a bad thing. Having said that, please, you need to understand the magnitude of the problem in perspective. And I want to give you a simple example. That's why I like to go to worldometers.info. So it's the worldometers.info. And they've added another column into their table, Dave. The column they've added is the population for any given country. Okay. So the United States has 1.5 million people that are infected, that we know of, right? And some have gotten better, some have passed away. But 1.5 million. Out of a total population of 330 million. Okay, now that number is probably higher. The infected, even if it's like 10 times higher, right? 15 million infected. It is still 0.5% of the total population is infected, right? Maybe it's high, maybe it's 1% or 2%, right? But the point I'm trying to make here is, right, while this is horrible, and there's certainly, it's a fast-acting disease, it seems to kick up a whole bunch of other issues, and we definitely have to get on top of it. You have to put it in perspective, right? Is this going to be the most horrendous thing that we ever face? Yes, but largely because we made it so. Our response was slow. Our response to this, whatever it is, event, forced the lockdown. It was our response to the initial. Don't forget, last November nobody had heard of this thing. Then it popped up December, January in China ostensibly, so we're told, and then all of a sudden, whoosh! It spread because we just didn't act fast enough, Dave. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's what happened here. Let's be very clear. If Australia had shut its borders as soon as the first infection came out of Wuhan, bang! You know how many infections we would have had? Well, probably 2,000 because of the stupid cruise ship. but the point
all of the cruise ships, by the way.
Yeah, but the thing is this, if that had been effective, if people had been prepared at home too, and I keep saying this, right? Everybody laughs at preppers until they're not. Okay?
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody's laughing at the preppers until they're not laughing anymore. So if everybody gone in,
you're right. So what did the preppers do? We already had a stock of food at home. What did the preppers do? We already had toilet paper. What did everyone else try to do? They went in too much, too late, and they ruined it for the rest of us. Yep. And they caused even more issues by trying to do that after the fact. Yep. And I think, Meki, their panic was just simply misplaced energy. They didn't know what to do, and it went out of control. And it was also in the US too, by the way.
Yeah, everywhere.
Because we saw it on the news. Maybe we'll run out of toilet paper.
Yeah, the cookie. Let's get some. But that's the thing, though, and you're 100% correct. It is the herd mentality that's in, because look, I don't know what to do. Ooh, but this guy over there, he's loaded up his trolley with toilet paper. Yeah. Clearly, that's got to be a survival item for me. So obviously he knows something I don't. So quickly, everybody get the toilet paper or whatever it might be. Nobody in the first. I remember this very clearly, right?
Yeah.
We said this on the show. In the first few weeks, nobody touched the pasta, nobody touched the rice, nobody touched the canned goods or the dried goods or the bottled milk. The
long UHT, yep.
Nobody. There was nothing. Freezer stuff went, and toilet paper went. And I go, what? Tissue paper went. Well, why? This is insanity. And it was, Dave, because people. This is part of the point I'm trying to make. People aren't prepared to deal with crisis situations. What is really important? In Australia, we're probably, lucky is probably the wrong word, but because we have to deal with crises on a regular basis, and I'm just mentioning here a couple of fire, flood, things like that, we have to have a plan. If there's a fire, well, what are the things that you want to take? You can't take your whole house, but if there were a fire threatening your home, which happened to Dave, this fire season, in fact, happened to me. I had a fire 400 meters from my house, and I quickly packed a couple of suitcases, and I largely put in the things that I couldn't replace because they weren't electronically stored, or they were precious and they just simply didn't exist anywhere else, like family albums, photos, things like that. Other than that, I just got some valuables and some clothes, and I got rations for food and water and put it in the car, and that was it. Right? Because that's all you can. If the chips are down, that's all you can carry. My grandmother, when she was running away from the Russians at the end of World War II, she had a bicycle with 4 children. And a washing basket full of stuff. That's what she was running with, right? So again, most people aren't mentally prepared for that, because we live in a society of plenty and just in time. Our economy is a just in time economy. What does that mean, Mackie? It means that you can fill any need you want whenever you want to.
That's right.
Dave, there's no more milk.
I'll just go down the shop.
Dang. Right there. Just go down the shop. You see what happens to society when those supply chains crumble. You think Walking Dead is bad? You think that show is bad? You wait till it really happens, when the supply chains fall apart. So, and this is really an object lesson here. I'm not saying we're out of it. I'm not saying this is over by any means, but we have to take something away from this. And this is to Dave's point around the new economy. We all have to become more useful, I guess, and more handy and more adept at doing things, fixing things, providing something of value, right? Whatever. Maybe you can cook really well. Maybe you're a mechanic. Maybe you're a plumber. Maybe you're a handy person, right? Or maybe you're quite strong and you can labor well. I don't know. Whatever your specific skill might be. But we all have to think about now. Well, how am I useful? Because if something like this happens again, even if it's different, or who knows, then you have to ask yourself, well, will I have a job? And if this situation continues for any length of time, how will I support myself? Right? These are questions you have to answer for yourselves. It's a real thing.
What was the big chain, Mickey, that fell over today? They announced it.
I forgot the name. What was it?
I can't. It's doing my head in.
Yeah.
Big store, big chain.
Yeah. But it's.
I never thought some of the companies that would go under, that have gone under. I never thought they would.
Because they couldn't change quick enough, or maybe their business model didn't allow it, or who knows why, right?
Or you know what? Those the family-owned businesses where they already own the premises. It's only really goods that they're selling for a profit as an income, but they don't need to necessarily. They could sell nothing for months and it would still be okay. Businesses are running really lean. Yeah. With no savings to fall back on should times get hard. And one of the things that my grandmother used to tell me about living through the Great Depression, and then she lived through Spanish flu, and my grandfather came back from the war. He didn't have it, luckily, but those times were really hard, and as a result you had to have money in the bank. And all of that seems to have disappeared. Our collective amnesia about what we're supposed to do in case You know, my dad used to say, look, you have a $10 note folded up and put in your sock. Yeah. Just in case you've drunk all your money and you need to get home, you've got some money to get home. Yeah, right? All of those, they sound like really silly advice points, or, you know, but when you unpack what we've done wrong, all the companies that have gone under were honestly on the brink anyway, living paycheck to paycheck. So, you know, they had massive loans that were only going to ever be supported by a steady income. Now they get the call to pay back that thing. Oh, we haven't got any money. You know, this virus thing, can't earn any money, don't have any money to pay it back. All right, so voluntary administration. Let's start with that.
Yeah.
Does that fix everything? Not really. You got the vultures circling above, looking like they're going to buy it, like Virgin Air in Australia, making a Queensland government put in a bid to nationalise it. How good is that?
Yeah,
right. Then my socialism blood, Mecky, is bubbling with excitement. There's a whole bunch of things that we should be bringing back, but you know what? Just how much can you really print to get away with it? You know what I mean? I think that's going to be the problem.
The answer is there's no limit to you can print whatever you want, and this is what you think, because you print until the end of time, okay, and you would get away with it, because who's keeping track, really, right? Inflation, yeah, whatever. Just print more money. Right. There's no money in the economy. Just print more.
Yeah.
And in fact, you just make it up. Oh, we need a bank loan. Yeah, sure. Here it is. Our system is set up to cater for this kind of insanity, right? I mean, it is insanity to start with, but right now there's a huge potential for abuse.
I can't remember the company, Mickey. It's doing my head in.
I know. I've just tried to Google it and I can't find it. I know what you're talking about. But look, what we're going to see here, we're going to see a lot of businesses not coming back from this. Not just small business, just business in general. The airline industry will be culled severely. Okay, and airline travel will become quite expensive, is my opinion, going forward.
Yeah,
the budget airlines, I don't think they can sustain themselves. I just don't think there's going to be a market. People will be afraid to travel, for starters. So there will be a lot less travel. But other businesses as well, I think we'll find a lot of people will have now found, hey, working from home is okay. We can work from home. Why do I have to pay such exorbitant rents for my office space?
Yeah, that's right.
Insane. I mean, some people can't help it, and you have to go to a place to work in, you know, so be it. But for anyone that doesn't have to, why would you?
Electricity, Becky.
Yeah.
Think about how much it costs to run a whole building, a multi-story building.
Yeah.
Crazy. The rent, I can't believe it. Just the cleaning.
Yeah, I know. The cleaning itself, you're right. There was a company, and I can't remember. It was a big company, though. I can't remember who it was. But they said, no, we're not going to go back to offices. After this, we just work from home.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It was a massive multinational company that said that. And yes, absolutely makes sense. I mean, why not? I mean, in Australia, again, from a worker's point of view, we've got certain protections, right? And like if we made redundant, meaning they fire us without cause, meaning you're not being fired because you're not performing, you're just being fired because, well, we can't afford to pay you anymore, really. You get a payout based on the number of years of service, at age, etc. It can be quite a nice sum of money in your pocket. So we have a bit of a security net here, right? Your proverbial savings there. Plus, we all have superannuation accounts, or most of us in Australia, right? And now people have accessed that superannuation. Some several tens of thousands of people have accessed it, and I think up to the value of $20,000. But it's money again that you were forced to save for your retirement. Will this cause an issue once you retire? Yeah, probably.
Oh yeah, it will. 10,000 now equals 100,000 when you retire.
That's the thing. But you know what? If you have to, then absolutely go ahead and take it out. I mean, we all have to live. It's no point saving for your retirement if you don't live to see it. It's not really much.
Yeah, that's true.
Point to it, right? So something will always happen, and look, it'll be the longer this goes on. And again, I have to look at the numbers here. The longer this goes on, whatever it is, by the way, again, I'm not going to get into the argument here. The more damage will be done on a long-term basis. It is that simple. It is that simple. The economies will be some will be permanently damaged. Certainly, certain sectors, even entire countries, I can see going under here. Like you look at countries like Greece, Italy to some extent, Turkey, and so forth in the Mediterranean, that are almost entirely dependent on tourism for their survival. I mean, Greece without tourism, it doesn't have an economy. Full stop. And they're already in bad shape, Dave, as you know, right?
Yeah.
And so the question is, what will happen to those countries? And the answer is, well, that's an excellent question. I don't know. They'll have to declare bankruptcy. The entire country will just declare bankruptcy, and that's it. You know, it's a tough situation. And again, Dave, the numbers. You know, I'm not seeing a flattening. I'm not seeing a leveling out. I'm not. Especially with all these other countries coming up from behind. You know, countries that are now having between 5 and 10,000 infections.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, the numbers are quite steep, and when you look at it's a linear increase where we're going to hit 5 mil probably, by Wednesday, Tuesday maybe, across the planet. Those really hit hard are all of the exponentials, Russia, Brazil, I think it's Spain, Chile, Mexico. They're all in a race for the second spot. Russia's exponential. Russia. You know what? The casual nature of which that I've been listening to these world leaders speak of it is the same as what we first heard. Mickey, there's no need for masks. Don't need masks.
Yep.
Don't use them because we haven't got any, but don't use them up, right? Test. Well, we can't test everybody because we haven't got very many tests, so we'll limit it to those who've only just come back from overseas. Now, whilst we've actually been quite successful in our lockdown, I think we did a pretty good job in our lockdown. Most people adhered to the strict regulations voluntarily, right? There were legal threats and fines against misbehaving, of course, but I think we did a pretty good job to get it under control. Just, however, when I look at some of these countries, Mecky, they've only been a week and 2 in, and they're in 1,000 people already. So not everyone is going to do this. I know that some countries have decided to abandon lockdown altogether and just open straight back up again. Ones that are landlocked within the European continent, I suppose, with a country with open, pretty much flexible borders. And I think maybe if we were to see a re-ramping up of the virus again, and go back into lockdown again, and those businesses that only stood up for a little time had to close again, that would be pretty hard. I think we're only going to. It's like when you pull the scab off a wound. It only had a couple of days before it was going to get better, but now you're looking at a week and a half again. So I think if we can just behave ourselves, I don't care what country you come from, try to behave yourself and try to stay distant from people. Try not to get the virus. Treat yourself like you've got it and you don't want to give it to anybody else. Staying away from people. Because, Mackie, as you said at the top of the show, we're not talking about the cause of the virus. Whether it was and these are the things that are out there at the moment, that it was made in a lab, or it just occurred jump species, or in fact that it's 5G driven. It doesn't matter.
No,
if the virus is out there, this thing is out there.
Something is there.
Something is there, definitely, and the dangers of it. Would you put yourself at risk? So, Mackie, if there was someone walking around the streets with, let's just use the old AR-15, if someone was walking the streets shooting people and giving the same death rate, like walking into an old folks' home and just killing everybody, we'd do something about it. The fact that you're willing to play and gamble saying that you're not going to get it because it's 95%, 98%, or whatever you'd like to call the percentage rate of a hit, of it going critical on you,
Mm-hmm.
why would you play that game? I mean, it's up to you. If you're a gambling person, good luck with it.
Yeah.
But Mackie, it does my head in. You know, I've got a family I've got to protect, and I've got to do the best I can to prevent the virus from coming into our family.
Yeah. Correct.
You know, how many old folks, Mackie, have we lost? You know,
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
I should think. You know, it's it's a horrible thing.
so I spoke about the money portion of an old folks' home, where you need to put a drawdown deposit at the old folks' home, so that your elderly family member can live out their days there in care.
Yeah.
And if they pass away, some places have a return of the unused portion of that deposit, of something like $250,000 it costs, right? Lock care can be even more. But if some places don't have a return of the balance, they just consume the balance into the corporation. And that made me worry, Mackie, about those poor people who didn't have a fair time in there because the business would absorb the balance. It was just free money. We can fill that bed tomorrow. You know, I worried about that, man. I have to say, I've had a few family members in care and in the past, and it's been a worry.
Yeah.
You know what? There was only a few really funny memes, Mackie, of the week that I loved, and these were all lockdown related, and some of them were inspired by the comedians, Mackie, if you've seen them on the ABC, that decided to send a camera to each person's house, and they could just do funny bits to camera, and they edited it all together. It was really hilarious.
Oh no, that sounds good.
Yeah. Ray Martin was the host of one of them. Where he's a funny, he's a straight kind of 60 Minutes kind of investigative journalist guy. Used to do in the nightly, current affairs programs and all those things, and he does these straight to camera hilarious gags. They even had a guy saying, "I'm going to cook from the weeds in my garden," and in the end he goes, "Oh, it's really metallic, that one." He's just plucking stuff randomly out of the garden. He goes, "Oh, it's really metallic. Actually, no, that's blood." And so by the end of it, he became unconscious and drooling, and he wasn't very well. But there's a change. This is that change, Mackie, in maybe how we can do what we used to do, but in a new way. I've been watching a lot of those, night programs that come out of the US, where they'll have a guest, but it's all via Skype or Zoom or whatever the platform is, right? I'm seeing some really, really clever things that they're doing. Like it's YouTube, but on television. Does it make sense? These are webcams and cams, and people don't have expensive writers now behind them. They're just doing a bit. And I think maybe there's something to it. Maybe there is. Mackie, the best meme was a 1984 meme that says, "Remain terrified, question nothing, stay home," and the person has a mask in front of the television in their own home, on their own.
That'd be right.
So, but outside of that, look, I enjoyed the first outing today. I have a car club I'm a member of, and we all sort of got together and in a car park, and there was 10 people there, adhering to the rules, all still say social distance from each other. And I'm not. This show is not morphing into a car show by any means. Just an example of all of us, for the first time after 8 to 12 weeks, finally emerged from our houses, and we got to say hello.
How'd that work out?
Well, it's the small things. I've noticed the small things.
But that's my question. I mean, how did it make you feel? I mean, that's it's all about maintaining or retaining, rather, not maintaining. I guess maintaining and retaining your sanity, right?
Oh, that train left the station a long time ago, Mickey. That's the funny part of it, right? So all I found was I really did crave going out, but it didn't matter that I went to the car meet. It really didn't. Just driving the car, being out and not having to have essential travel only. I found that was really enjoyable. It was almost gaining back something that I knew I'd lost, but I'm so not fussed. I'm not really fussed on the going out. I'm kind of getting used to it, to be honest.
Well, that's the point, though, right? Again, in the panopticon, most people stay in their cells. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, it's really about this self-guarded prison. The panopticon is the ideal way where you think you're being watched, but you're really watching yourself in a way, and everybody else is watching you. But they're not actually prison guards per se. So we are now in such a frenzy, and our mental state is so malleable right now, because this is another thing that people don't realize. Whenever something catastrophic or traumatic happens to a person, that person's mind becomes very easily influenced, very easily changed and guided. That's why compartmentalization happens in children after they've been abused, deliberately sometimes by, you hear about satanic cults and all that. That's what this is. Even any cult, forget satanic, any cult really can do it. And your mind fractures, fragments, and tries to deal with an situation by becoming more, more open to these restrictions. And Stockholm Syndrome is one of those things that manifests where you identify with your abuser, kidnapper, whatever it might be. And right now, think of the human race being abused significantly, and we have been abused for a long time, but right now it is more pronounced and in fact worse than almost in every other time in human history, simply because we have the media capabilities to transmit this fear across the globe, outer space, if we were there too, right? We now have the power to take this pandemic, let's call it, and infect everybody on the planet with fear, right? It's getting worse, and I'm not saying it's being stepped up, but it is stepping up now that we're learning there's something like Kawasaki's disease that could affect children. We're learning that people are infectious even if they're not showing symptoms. We're learning that people might never get rid of this virus. We're learning that herd immunity may not be a thing for this one either, because we don't know if the antibodies that are being formed in the body are effective. We don't know if there's a vaccine. We don't know if there's a cure. So all of these things are just creating this massive wave of fear. And right now, we would pretty much do anything, give anything, and accept anything if someone came along and said, you know what, hey, you got to do this, this, and this, and you're going to be fine. You are going to be safe. Nothing is going to happen to you. Stay in your house. Don't talk to anyone. Don't touch anyone. Just be imprisoned in your own home. That's what Dave is talking about, right? Getting used to it. Human beings are nothing if not resilient. But the thing is this: there are a lot of people out there that don't have families, that aren't living in family units. They're living on their own. Old people, young people, doesn't matter. One of the biggest threats that we're facing right now, Dave, is the threat of suicide. Because people simply cannot deal with the situation, because we are social animals. I mean, most people need people. Most people need the social interaction. Most people need their, the routine. On a Friday night, I see my buddies at the pub. On a Saturday, I go play footy. On a Sunday, I go and see my grandparents. Whatever it might be, I don't care. Whatever your routine is, you need it for your life to be sane. That's gone away. The one I mean, we will only know this in 4 or 5 years from now, when all of this is over and we're analyzing the numbers. We'll find out how many people actually died. Because right now, Dave, I listened to a few reports, and the doctors are savvy to this, and they're saying we're seeing spikes in deaths that are unusual. So 50, 60, 100,000 more people died in this period of time than in any comparable period leading over the years, right? So our countries and cities and communities have seen these things, and most likely they're all related to this pandemic, right? So this is actually happening.
Yeah. So Mickey, the thing that we'll be telling our children and our grandkids is the life before 2020. and how it made the life after 2020.
Yeah.
Because we're living in it. And so you may not see this to the extent that we'll be telling these stories about. But, you know, one day they'll do something and it'll remind us about how that was affected.
Yeah.
You know, pretty much there's, you know, the billionaires had to save the aviation industry. Why is it all owned by one person? They were the only other person who could afford to buy it all.
Yeah, I'm hearing for the first time, Dave, out there, people are saying this. We've been saying this for years on the show. I remember saying this for the first time years ago. I said, there's no moral justification for billionaires to exist.
No, that's right.
There simply isn't. And now I've seen comedians come up with this and it's going mainstream. What this one comedian said, she said, you know what? As soon as you get to $100 million, you just get a certificate. Yeah, you've won capitalism.
You won the game, that's right.
You've won capitalism. Every other dollar that you have now goes into something else, like charity or supporting the indigent or whatever it might be. You know, social works.
You move
$100
on.
million, or make it $500 million, or make it $50 million. I don't really care. Ask yourself, how much money do you need? What do you actually need in your life? Because the thing is this: there are very few things that have an intrinsic value in this world. The value is really defined by how necessary is it for your survival, and then secondly, how much effort, care, and skill has gone into creating it. I'll give you an example. All right, so obviously food, water, and air are completely valuable, intrinsically valuable. You can't be without them. So that's done. Right, they're fairly inexpensive and affordable. That's great. Right, but then there are things that take craftsmanship and skill. If you create a really nice automatic watch, for example, it'll take a long time to do it, and it'll only be done by high precision instruments, but by highly trained people. So having that thing expensive makes sense because it takes effort to create it. If you want to have a really nice gourmet meal with all these wonderful flavors and seasonings and the best meat and etc., that'll cost you money as well because of all the effort, work, and raw materials that goes into it. If you want something cheap, like a hot dog, then you get a hot dog. But so there is a certain level of intrinsic value that exists. Gold has no intrinsic value. Money has only got the value that we imbue upon it, like the fiat currency, right? Because well, why is this money? There's nothing backing it up. Well, because the government says it is. Oh, okay, well, I see. Fair enough. And the same with many other things, right? Unless it has some intrinsic value. We should not be able to charge through the nose for it, and it is this need to accumulate more, have more, be more, this greed that we have, this insatiable lust for more at any cost. Not in all of us, but in a lot of us is what's killing us here, because the world would be a very different place if we didn't live in that economy. Who cares about supply chains if everything is local and you're eating, seasonal food? Who cares? Doesn't matter. Who cares about producing the cheapest thing if profit is not a motive? Take profit out of the equation. There's no. Well, why would you produce in China? Why would you produce anywhere that's cheap and exploiting the people that build these things for you, make the shoes, make the computers, right? At a pittance of what you would accept as payment. If the profit motive didn't exist, then none of our economy as it is today would not exist. Our problem fundamentally is twofold. One is human nature, and secondly is greed, which is part of human nature, right? That is really what our problem is fundamentally. If we live properly, and I think we have in the past, Dave, the stories of golden ages and such, and look at what society's achieved back then. You can call them primitive, but again, I don't want to go into it. I mean, we'll get to it later because we're still looking at ancient tech here. They moved 1,000-ton stones. They did do that, right? I'm not saying it was an ideal situation, but I don't know. I haven't been there. I wasn't there. But there's a lot of stuff here that we did wrong, and it was done to us wrong, and we just go with it. Oh yeah, that's just why, Dave. Why do you have to take out a loan from a bank to build a house? Why? I've asked this question since I was a child, small child. I look at the Amish. You know what the Amish do? The Amish go, "Hey, buddies, I need to raise a barn." So
you go, "Yeah, sure," and they all get together. Yeah.
They raise a barn because why? Because they can. They can. Right? It's nuts.
So Mekhi, I found all this. This was 247wallstreet.com put together a list of companies that are teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. should they remain closed. And Newman Marcus, StubHub, JCPenney, AMC Theatres, Sears, We Work Real Estate, JC Crew, Frontier Communications, Bed Bath and Beyond. See, Frontier Communications is like does bands, and no one's going to concerts. Hertz Rent-A-Car, Steak and Shake, Nordstrom's. Wow, GNC, Ruby Tuesday, Gold's Gym. That's right, I remember hearing about Gold's Gym.
Yeah, I heard about that too.
Yeah.
They're actually out.
Yeah, I know, they're gone. Best Buy, Mickey.
Best Buy?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's some other ones as well. Also, the Norwegian Cruise Line. And look, no doubt they got hit pretty hard, the cruise lines. But aircraft companies, or I think anything to do with travel, you've got to be pretty hard. But Sears, Mickey, I remember Sears back in the 80s when I was there. JCPenney, my goodness,
they're massive.
Look, that's all I could find on it. I wanted to round that out anyway. There was no help from the chat room. I put a call out. I got nothing.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
But thanks for helping anyway, right? We tried to do it silently so no one else would know, but that's the way it goes sometimes. The other thing was, Mickey, we have a dispute with China, according to the to our country and China. So Australia said, I think the world deserves an explanation. Let's do an investigation into the source of the virus. Probably a good thing. Hindsight would probably prove that to be a good idea. But China said, really, no, that's not good. You think that's bad? Right, we can cut some trade off. So they put an 80% tariff on our barley, and while one of 4 abattoirs they cut off, one of them is actually owned by China. So that's a bit weird, but someone
has done the homework.
That's right. Oops.
Wilson, get in here.
It's always Wilson. But what I found extraordinary was we've got Simon Birmingham. He says that the Australian government is always open for dialogue with international players. However, China refused to call him back. I'm not talking to you no more.
We're not on speaking terms. No,
it's funny, right? So,
but this is the funny thing, though, Dave. Yeah. This is what concerns me. Sorry. In fact, we should probably go into the second hour, discuss it a bit further. Why though? I mean, ostensibly, again, it seems because Australia asked for a probe investigation, international investigation into the origin of this virus, right? And this kind of tit-for-tat thing started happening after that. Now the Chinese are saying, oh no, it's not entirely true. It's a technicality. We're thinking you dumped barley on our market, which means we're selling barley cheaper in China than we would sell it in Australia, right? So just to I guess kill the competition. Similarly with some of the beef, they haven't stopped the pork though.
No, not the pork, only the beef. That's right.
Yeah, because the beef is for the richer Chinese, right? For the more affluent. But if you stop the pork exports, you have a riot on the hands, because Australia is almost the only place in the world that guarantees safe pork.
That's right.
Everywhere else we have massive livestock reductions. Remember the swine flu recently?
That's right.
So that hasn't been stopped. When we know the chips are down and we know things are really heating up, when the Chinese stop the pork imports from Australia, then I'll take it seriously.
There's the music. We've reached the middle of this show. Take your time to donate to the station in between, maybe subscribe to the archives, and we'll catch you after the short break.
RadioFreedomSlips.com, and we're going to get back to your host.
Hello and welcome back to Dave and Mickey Shiny Set Out. This is show number 426, 628, 400. And don't remember, this is listener-funded radio, which means you can support the station. In fact, the station needs you to support it. And just go to the homepage if you want. You can look at some of the sponsor links. Some might be some useful product, which is great. Or you can just donate. Donating is good. Or you can subscribe, even better. Get something for your money, right? Donation, is good. But if you want something for your cash, subscribe and get access to the archives of all of the shows and all the hosts' material. And that's what Dave said at the beginning of the show, where you can also catch Solaris. a great show that just precedes ours. Dave!
Yes.
Should we round out our discussion from before the break before we dive into the ancient tech for today?
Yes. Yeah, there wasn't anything else I had to add, though.
Oh, okay, Nick, yes, let's round it out.
It's all
Consider
good.
it
Let's do
rounded.
it. It's now round.
It is no longer flat. Oh, hey, don't go there. That's too soon. Too soon? Yeah, baby. It's never too soon for that. No, look, today we're going to talk about ancient tech. Ancient tech, very important, because we contend here at the Shiny Side Up, no pun intended, of course, tinfoil hats on and all that, that there were many ancient civilizations preceding ours which are completely lost to us. We no longer know who they were, what they did, or how they did it, but it was done, and we have evidence of their doing it that survives to this day, either physically, and we've discussed some of it, and we'll discuss some more of it, in fact, today, hopefully, and in legends, in writing, cuneiform writing mostly, and some other ancient scripts, as well as, I guess, really inexplicable phenomena that we see all over the world all the time. And I think that's part of the pattern here as well, where, I'm just going to say Skinwalker Ranch, Bermuda Triangle, the installation in Siberia, and just to leave it at that. But there are these mysterious places on the planet which just, we can't get our head around it, Dave. It's just not possible, right? But why don't you tell us about, if you will, about sound manipulation?
Yeah, completely. And I've only just found a spot.
Nice.
The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta has special significance due to its remarkable acoustic properties. The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni is an underground cave system covering around about 500 square meters on 3 levels, with various interconnecting corridors and passageways that lead to a number of small chambers built between 3000 to 2500 BC. The cave system was rediscovered in 1902, and since then there has been particular interest in one of the rooms, named the Oracle Chamber. With its ceilings intact, the underground structure holds secrets of a strange play of sound in the stone rooms and halls, a forgotten technology which operates on the human emotional sphere. The space is said to amplify voices dramatically, with certain frequencies resonating enough to be felt through the body. The Hal Saflieni Hypogeum has a dark history. Researchers have discovered the Hypogeum contained the bodies of over 7,000 people, a speaking chamber, trilithons, linteled doorways, a large cistern, and a holy of holies surrounded by embryonic chambers. What experiments were conducted in this bizarre, mysterious place? One asks.
I know. In fact, we do know that the ancients manipulated sound, and we have some anecdotal evidence. This is one of the pieces, and the other one we haven't captured here, but it's around the levitation of heavy objects. There was a Tibetan traveler, a European traveler to Tibet, who noticed that there was a hollow bowl, a shallow bowl, sort of carved into the rock at the bottom of a sheer rock cliff. And it was fairly large, right? So it was a concave bowl. And what he witnessed was a whole bunch of Buddhist monks, if you will, assembling in front of this bowl, putting a large rock in that bowl, and starting to play music or instruments, and creating a resonant harmonic frequency, which then proceeded, very strangely, obviously, to lift a said rock up the rock face to the top of it. So there was a big boulder, and it was lifted there, seemingly, by the sound waves that were produced by the orchestra. Now, we know this is possible in principle because you might remember this, Dave. There was an experiment done recently in a laboratory, and they essentially played sounds and focused it on one point, where they created sort of like a dead zone, if you will. And the frequencies, the intersecting frequencies, created a point where the air itself held a certain, I think it was a pea-sized metal ball,
or
something like that.
I've seen stuff like that. Yep.
Yeah, in place, but it was held in place simply by those frequencies. Now, obviously, it's the atmosphere that's being shaped around this object. So the atmosphere is not empty; it's air. So you feel it when you move through it quickly. And clearly, if you compress it in just the right way with the right frequencies, it can become solid enough to hold something. Mm-hmm. And that's really the technology we're talking about here. It's not magic. It's just physics, but it's advanced. It's advanced physics, and it's physics to a level. Well, I mean, you don't just stumble upon this, right? You have to experiment and trial and error to get the right frequencies to lift certain things and whatnot. So we know sound was a very important thing to the ancients, a technology that we pretty much have completely lost knowledge of, right? Apart from this couple experiments here and there. Brings us to batteries, Dave, in the ancient world. Excuse me. Now, obviously, we believe that batteries are a fairly recent invention, right? We'll get to when they were invented in a second here. But it seems maybe not. Maybe not. An ancient Jewish manuscript, which was called The Queen of Sheba and Her Only Son, Menelik, translated by Sir E.A. Wallace Budge, contains the following statement. Now the house of Solomon, the king, was illuminated as by day, for in his wisdom he had made shining pearls, which were like unto the sun, the moon, and the stars in the roof of his house. Apparently, electricity in one form or another was present on Earth through the centuries, and its existence was mentioned in many ancient records. And in fact, before I hand it to you on the ancient Baghdad batteries, if you look at the inside of the pyramids, right, any of the passageways, any chambers, there's no soot. Why is there no soot, Mackie? Because clearly they didn't use any torches to light the ways. Now, did they light the ways at all? I don't know, but they didn't use torches. So if any lighting was happening inside the Great Pyramid, or any of the pyramids for that matter, it was not by the standard means we would ascribe to the copper-aged dwellers or builders, as we suppose they have been. Fascinating stuff, my friend. What about the ancient Baghdad Battery stuff?
Yeah, extraordinary stuff. A small undecorated artifact with rather plain appearance is believed by some scientists to be an example of a prehistoric electrical power source. It's the so-called Baghdad Battery, also known as the Parthian Battery. The artifact, thought to be a 2,000-year-old electric battery, was found in 1936 by railroad workers in the area of Tel Kaushut, Rabu in South Baghdad. Most sources date the batteries to around about 200 BC, but the first known electrical battery, the Voltaic Pile, was not invented by Italian physicist Alessandro Volta until 1799. The bottoms of these mysterious cylinders were capped with copper discs and sealed with bitumen or asphalt. Another insulating layer of bitumen sealed the tops of the pots and held in place iron rods suspended into the center of the copper cylinders. The rods showed a strong evidence of having been corroded by an acid solution that evaporated long ago.
Fantastic stuff. I mean, clearly somebody came across this, and what people have believed is they use these batteries, for gold plating and silver plating. That's what they believe, and
that's the very least of their use, right?
Exactly, right, and it's the one that is accepted by science now. They used grape juice as the alkaline liquid, look. If you have something like
it works.
Yeah, of course it can.
But you can increase the voltage like we do with modern day batteries.
Yeah, you just link them in series. There you go.
Series changes the voltage, and parallel increases the amperage.
Correct. And if we are giving
I'm
these
doing my
people,
left-hand rule.
no, I know, but if we're giving people there the credit for coming up with something like that, I think we should give them credit for being able to think about these concept of increasing amperage and voltage as well, right? I think we should. That's my opinion. And we have these funny paintings in Egypt of people holding
And
what
glyphs.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the glyphs, but this is actually a painting, which is sort of at the bottom of the text, of people holding what for all the world looks like a light bulb, with the black and white cable running from it. Is it that, or is this just our modern eyes wanting to see that? I don't know. Again, the mystery of the no soot.
I don't think it's pareidolia, Mackie. When we're looking at it, we look with our modern eyes. If we looked back in the 1700s, we would just think it was some kind of ornament.
Yeah, with the snake
Today,
inside.
we look at it and go, light bulb.
Yeah. So, again, we've said this before, and I'll say it again. It is really important to look at these ancient texts, ancient buildings, artifacts, ruins, with modern eyes. Don't look at them in what we think is the context of their creation, because I think we're wrong. Look at them in our context. Look at them as though they were made by us. And all of a sudden, a whole bunch of things all of a sudden makes a lot more sense. Okay. Now, this brings us to an ancient, sophisticated mercury-based gilding that we still can't replicate today, interestingly enough. Now, gilding is the art of putting a gold coating on another metal, right? That's really what this is. So, gold plating, that's really what it is. And sometimes the technology was used to apply real gold and silver. It was also used fraudulently, of course, to make cheap metal statues that look like gold or silver. And even the acid test, unless you use a lot of it, wouldn't tell you what it was. Ancients were in possession of very sophisticated knowledge, it seems. Ancient gold and silversmiths used mercury, which was produced more than 8,000 years ago in Turkey. 8,000 years, guys. Which civilization? We don't know. Mercury was used for gilding at the domes, interiors of cathedrals, religious figures, and more in many parts of the ancient world. Many of the ancients' techniques are still unknown. They were so skilled that some of the quality they achieved has still not been matched. In ancient times, these sophisticated methods were used to produce and decorate different types of artifacts, such as jewels, statues, amulets, and commonly used objects. Gilders performed these processes not only to decorate objects, but also to simulate the appearance of gold or silver, sometimes fraudulently. From a technology point of view, the aim of these workers, or workmen over 2,000 years ago, was to make the precious metal coatings as thin and adherent as possible. This was in order to save expensive metals and to improve the resistance of the wear caused by continued use and circulation. As we know, gold doesn't really tarnish. Recent findings confirm the high level of competence reached by the ancient artists and craftsmen, and stresses an artistic quality of the objects they produced could not be bettered in ancient times and has not yet been reached in modern ones. So we come across this gilding, or these gilding processes are better than anything we can do today, and we've got nanotech. Crazy stuff.
Wow, that's something else. Mackie, there was an ancient computer, an enigmatic Antikythera Mechanism, that still is full of secrets today. And I've actually used that on our show image, on our slide, because we have it. It's been X-rayed, and I've got the X-ray of that up on our slide there. So Captain Demetrius Kontos and a crew of sponge divers from Simi Island discovered the Antikythera shipwreck during the spring of 1900 and recovered artifacts during the first expedition with the Hellenic Royal Navy in 1900 to 1901. The Antikythera Mechanism is an ancient hand-powered Greek analog computer, which has also been described as the first example of such device used to predict astronomical positions and eclipses for calendar and astrological purposes decades in advance of when they should have had it. It could be also used to track the 4-year cycle of athletic games, which was similar to an Olympiad. the cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. This artifact was retrieved from the sea in 1901 and identified on the 17th of May 1902 as containing a gear by archaeologist Valerius Stace. Among wreckage retrieved from a shipwreck off the coast of Greek island of Antikythera, the instrument is believed to have been designed and constructed by Greek scientists and has been variously dated to about 87 BC or between 150 and 100 BC or to 205 BC or within a generation before the shipwreck, which has been dated to approximately 70 to 60 BC. They don't quite know when it was.
I was just going to say,
it's a little obvious.
We're not sure.
Captain Obvious. Captain Demetrius Contus Obvious. Sorry, I shouldn't put his name down. He did a good thing. He brought something to modern times, which is extraordinary. The device housed in the remains of a 34 centimetre, that's nearly a foot long, or just a bit more than a foot, by 18 centimetres, but half that, by 9 half again, which is 13 inches by 7 inches by 3 inches. Wooden box was found as one lump, later separated into 3 main fragments, which are now divided into 82 separate fragments after conservation efforts have been taken place. 4 of these fragments contain gears, while inscriptions are found on many others. The largest gear is approximately 14 centimetres across, 5.5 inches in diameter, and originally had 223 teeth. It's a complex clockwork mechanism composed of at least 30 meshing bronze gears. A team led by Mike Edmonds and Tony Freeth at Cardiff University used modern computer X-ray tomography and high-resolution surface scanning to image inside fragments of the crust-encased mechanism and read the faintest inscriptions that once covered the outer casing of the machine. Detailed imaging of the mechanism suggests that it had 37 gear wheels, enabling it to follow the movements of the moon, the sun, and the zodiac, to predict eclipses, and even to model the irregular orbit of the moon, where the moon's velocity is higher in its perigee than its apogee even. This motion was studied in the 2nd century by BC by astronomer Hipparchus of Rhodes, and has speculated that he may have been consulted in the machine's construction. The knowledge of this technology was lost at some point in time in antiquity. Similar technology works later appeared in the medieval, Byzantine and Islamic worlds, but with similar complexity did not appear again until the development of the mechanical astronomical clocks in Europe in the 14th century. Also, all known fragments of the Antikythera Mechanism are now kept in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, along with a number of artistic reconstructions and replicas of the mechanism to demonstrate how it may have looked and worked.
Yeah, to me, this is one of the most telling examples of an ancient tech. And not let's assume for a second here. Let's be conservative and say that, yeah, in fact, it was the ancient Greeks 2,000 years ago that invented this, and that's cool, right? And now, first of all, I keep saying this every time we talk about this. Think about this. There's a guy that's diving for sponges. That's what they're doing, all right? Captain Demetrius Contus was diving for sponges. They discover the wreck, and lo and behold, they also discover a whole bunch of other stuff, including the Antikythera Mechanism. Mm-hmm. What luck! What luck! The only, and then we go ahead and say, oh, it's the only one that was ever made. What luck to find the only one that was ever made. Yeah. By complete coincidence, by a sponge diver. And this goes to show again that most of the really startling discoveries in archaeology are completely by coincidence. Troy, an amateur, found it. Göbekli Tepe, a farmer trying to remove a tree stump, found it, or actually a big rock, I think he tried to remove. Yeah, and then I can go on. There's, in fact, most of them are complete coincidences, right? Forget about being a trained scientist here for a second. It's the amateurs we should thank. Not only that, so it's the only one ever made, and then it's the only one that we ever found. They all should buy lottery tickets every day. They should win lottery. That's how likely this is. I think there was a multitude of devices out there because it was useful. Clearly, if it's useful, you use it. It might have been expensive, maybe. I would say it was, right? But people had it. It was there, right? So therefore, I think we should assume that most ships back then had it, which also means if they had it, oceanic crossings, not just little Mediterranean stints here and there, are becoming a lot more plausible, right? You marry that with the Viking compass, and all of a sudden we have an ancient seafaring peoples that could have gone anywhere: Africa, Australia, the Americas. None of that would have been beyond them, because we used to think, oh well, you just navigate by following the coastline. Well, no, you don't have to anymore, right? If you have these advanced technologies.
Well, think about, marry this up, Meki, to the map of Antarctica.
Yeah, correct.
Ice on it.
Ah, there you go, right? So, no, but the other point here that this proves, this is the other point it proves, Dave. So let's say, because this mechanism clearly has got enormous value, right? It's very useful. It's a very useful thing, right? But for 1,400 years, 1,400 years, we didn't produce anything like it.
We had nothing like it, that's right.
So it was lost completely, at least to the Europeans. It seems that maybe the Chinese and the sorry, not the Chinese, the Byzantines and also the Islamic world, which is really the Levant, the Middle East, had some knowledge of it, not to the same level of sophistication probably. But my point is, Europe, where it originated, Greece and so forth, they lost it for close to 1,500 years, 1,500. It was just gone. And we didn't, in fact, we didn't invent anything like it until the mechanical clock, right, in the 14th century. So, and that's interesting here enough, is also, this was during the time of the Renaissance, when a lot of knowledge from the East flooded back into Europe. Okay, so the Dark Ages had done, the Roman Empire was collapsed in 500 AD and so forth. So my point here, though, Dave, is a long speech for a small point, that it can happen. These things, and this is really another point of this show, highly technological advances, really useful things, can fall into complete obscurity over time, for whatever reason. It doesn't matter why or how, it happened. That's the fact here, Dave. It happened. So why is it not possible that an ancient, or many ancient high-tech civilizations are similarly lost to us, similarly lost in time? They're just gone, right?
It's a great example of that point. But I agree that it wouldn't be the only one, and I agree that that to be able to make it, you'd have to have a complete, full, and mathematical understanding of the relationships of all of it. How you could have it predict the irregular movement of the moon using gears? That's just what?
I know, right?
Hang on a minute.
That's ingenious.
Yeah, completely. So you'd have to have a varying gear that rotated slowly, clearly, like once per day. It came to the next tooth on an irregularly shaped gear to be able to have perigee and apogee matching. Yeah. But you'd have to have this is it. You need writing, you need planning, you need the materials, you need to be able to make those tiny little cuts and consistent cuts, and you need design. And so you need engineering, design, maths, management, you need physics, you need astrological measurements, totally accurate. You know what? You need metallurgy. I have a really hard time with this being just one of those out of the blue devices that were made as a one-off. It goes against my grain, Mackie, too. But
then having it found after it was...
Oh, okay, that's even better.
It was in the water for 2,000 years, and the sponge diver comes along, oh, what bit of luck there, old chap.
He's English now.
Yeah, sure, why not? Doesn't matter. No, but it's look. I find it. I'm insulted. Then when people say these things, I feel my intelligence is insulted when statements are made to this nature. Right? It's like saying, "Oh, nature planned for this to happen." That also insults me. Sure. Nature is a concept. It's not a person.
Wait. So all of nature got together.
Yeah,
and they had a meeting. They had to chair. Someone had to chair the meeting.
There you go.
Nature had to chair the meeting and be.
Dinosaurs out. People in. Mammals are good. Dinosaurs bad. That was the outcome. Did you get the memo? What?
It sent itself the memo. That's really funny. That is really funny. So, but anyway, so look, Meki, what was in China that's of interest to us?
Yeah, again, like we maintained before, we believe that certainly India and China, and I think to some extent the Aboriginal people of Australia as well, should retain some knowledge of this ancient lost civilization, at least the last one that went to pot before ours. And there are many examples of robots that were created in ancient China. You know, in ancient China, we come across a number of highly advanced robots that could sing, dance, act like servants, and perform many other surprising tasks. Some of these remarkable robots are even said to have possessed lifelike organs such as bones, muscle, joints, skin, and hair. It is quite remarkable considering it is only recently our modern civilization has started to develop human-like robots. There's no doubt mechanical engineering in ancient China reached a very high level, and we're going to have a whole section on China as part of the show notes. We'll get back to this. History of robots in ancient China can be traced far back in time. Robots existed not only during, but also before the Tang dynasty, which was about 1 to 1,500 years ago, 618 to 907 AD. The next one, though, Dave, is one of my personal favorites. Please, and it's followed by my personal favorite right after that.
There's a lot of those in this. Okay, the Dorchester pot, originating from the 593 million year old Roxbury conglomerate. Another artifact that has everyone scratching their heads. How is it possible that such an item even exists? The age of the pot is the #1 discussion among experts, as it appears that no one can agree on how old it exactly is. According to geologists, the Roxbury conglomerate, where this mysterious pot originated from, has been dated as having accumulated between 570 and 593 million years ago during the Ediacaran period. I was going to make a joke. I'll leave it alone. Does this make it between 500 and 600 million years old? According to several researchers, it's a possibility. In principle, it is not too clear if the pot was really embedded within the rock, since the explosion was the cause of its discovery. The measurements of the pot are about 4.5 inches, which is 11.5 centimeters high, 6.5 inches in diameter. At the base, it's about 2.5 inches in diameter at the top. Right. The small vase is made entirely of zinc and was decorated with silver inlay. You can see 6 floral ornaments on its side and a kind of vinyl crown at the bottom. The decorative work and perfect manufacturing of the Dorchester vase denote its creator was a master craftsman in the modelling of zinc. Hello.
It's fascinating stuff, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Look, the thing is this. I'm just going to look at something here because something just jogged my memory, right? Now, we're saying this is roughly it could be 500 and
That's
93.
the strata it was found.
Well, yeah, exactly, right. But when did flowering plants first appear on the planet? Okay,
because that's what's depicted on the side. Yeah.
Aha. So the advent of flowering plants. Okay, this is really where it gets this whole thing gets really very strange. They haven't been around that long.
No.
Okay. So yeah, the ancestors of flowering plants diverged from gymnosperms in the Triassic period, which was 245 to 202 million years ago. And the first flowering plants are known from about 140 million years ago. This is according to science, right? So this pot, go on.
What was that book where we can't decipher the words and the plants are of an origin that we can't...
Oh, the Voynich manuscript.
Yeah, the Voynich.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe maybe this is from a people that visited,
Right.
and you know when you go on a picnic with your family and you get back in the car and you go, where's the toy? Like you're halfway home and they go, I think I left behind.
Yeah, I forgot about
children. I'm not going back now. Like, we'll buy another one.
I know. But you know, the funny thing is this, in none of the debunkers, and I've read extensively on this, it's actually featured in Forbidden Archaeology by Cremo as well, of course, right? None of the debunkers has ever brought up the fact that flowering plants only really appeared the way we know them, or we think, about 140 million years ago. And that in itself is a whole other mystery, which we will spend some time on in a future show.
That's a quarter of the age of the thing.
That's a quarter of the age of the thing. So,
it's an echo,
right?
Echo.
And so this is a mystery up on a mystery, and which is encased in an even greater enigma, which is the flowering plant mystery, because there's no good reason for flowering plants to exist at all. None.
To be used as the the inspiration for the decoration, right?
Correct, but even the very existence of flowering plants themselves, right? It makes absolutely no sense from a biological point of view, because plants were getting along just fine, and still are. Ferns, for example, right? It's one of the non-flowering plants that survive to this day. And for plants to be there, or to exist as they do today, and they just sprang into existence, right? Fully formed. Most of the species and so forth. I mean, there's been diversification since. They require insects or an outside agency, and not just
pollinator.
wind.
That's right.
Yeah, you need a pollinator.
Yeah. And
it's a very highly specialized system. If you look just very simply at the bees and flowers, look at the bees and flowers. Right, the bees are built as the perfect pollinators, right? The pollen attaches to their little furry hind legs. They fly around. They get the nectar, which is really what the plant uses to draw them in. They get the nectar. They store it in their stomach. At the same time, they touch the stem of the flowers and collect the pollen and so forth. Fly to the next one, pollinate, as it were.
Cross-pollinating.
It's really artificial insemination is what we're talking about here, right? And they fly around.
It's a symbiotic relationship, which couldn't have started with bees just idly sitting around going, "Geez, I wish there was flowers."
Yeah,
and the flowers going, I'm doing all this work here. What's going on?
Where are those bees? Come on, man! We've been waiting for a while.
We need some pollinators.
So it's one of those highly complex and specialized systems where you think, why and how and what it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's okay. Let's park it because it is there. So that's this mystery of the pot, which predates the advent of flowers by some 400 million years. Now, I have a problem with all these dating things anyway, and I think humanity is a lot older, and I think a lot of other things a lot older than what we give it credence for, and I think we got a whole bunch of our dating simply wrong.
Could we do carbon-14 on it or something like that?
Well, that's the only for organic matter. But yes, that's the thing. But what it also assumes is that these isotopes haven't changed their radiation levels, right? And we also assume that the rate of decay in these isotopes remains the same. It doesn't have to be carbon-14. The other isotopes we can date, but we assume a steady state. That's one of the drawbacks. So one of the actually three main limitations to this kind of dating, which is absolute dating and not relative dating. Relative dating is when something is found in the earth in a certain strata. Correct, like this one here, right? This gets more mysterious the more you think about it, right? But this is the first time I actually thought about it. Hang on, this has got flower ornaments, but flowers didn't appear until about 440 million years ago. Which
it's made of zinc, Mickey.
It is made of zinc. It's made of zinc.
When do people start? I'm going to look into the metallurgy side of this and find if we ever made zinc cups.
Yeah, and in fact we wouldn't have made them recently. And it was not only that, but it was decorated with a silver inlay. So it's one thing to have a cup. You make a cup out of zinc, or whatever. That's cool, right? But the level of, especially silver decoration, that would imply a certain level of high civilization, where you have artisans that can make things pretty. If you live in a utilitarian society, like if you're a cave dweller or whatever, right, you're not going to make pretty things necessarily. It's certainly not sophisticated pretty things that have two different metals in them, right? You might make it pretty by carving on it or, painting it, sure. Human beings always want to make things pretty, but this level of sophistication you would not ascribe to a troglodyte. right? And sorry, troglodyte just means cave dweller. It's a compound mystery, Dave. It's a compound.
Yeah, sure it is.
Which brings me to one of my favorite pieces of all archaeology, crypto or otherwise, and this is an iron cup that was discovered inside a piece of coal that we believe may be 300 million years old. It's a perfect piece of metal, and it was discovered in 1912 in a mine in Wilburton, Oklahoma. Its discoverer was Frank J. Kennard, and according to him, it was found within a block of coal. The usual problems are seen in the discovery of this item. Anecdotal evidence is basically the only thing we have. Yet, that doesn't explain how the artifact ended up embedded in the coal, which is around 300 million years old. So as skeptics would say, no matter how certain Frank Kennard might have been at the time of his discovery, skeptics will provide dozens of alternative explanations regarding the item and how it ended up inside the coal. Not only for this item, but for many other items with similar age. And we have discussed them at length, and I'm happy to go through this again. But if you haven't, if you're not aware of any of this, I do recommend you read Richard Cremo's book, Forbidden Archaeology. It is very, very dry reading. Okay, and if you're not given to reading academic texts, don't do it. Get the abridged version because there is one. But the reason. What a great academic achievement. What a great piece of research you have done. Clearly, your conclusions are all bonkers, but the research that went into it is phenomenal. And clearly, you can't believe any of the people of the 19th century because they're all liars and they just want to be noticed. Okay?
Yeah, right.
Now, obviously, this is where interesting ancient aliens come in. But the ancient alien theorists have a high regard when it comes to items like this. They're both mysterious and challenge the typical view of history and archaeology. Of course they do. It seems that every time one of these items pops up, they're seen by archaeology and mainstream history as potential enemies, since their true origin and age might challenge the conventional way. Researchers look at history and civilization. Now, what about your thoughts, everybody out there? Are they elaborate hoaxes, as the skeptics suggest, or just, uninformed statements by laymen or people seeking attention? Or is there something more to it? Because we found many. So we've given you two here. The Dorchester pot and the iron cup. There are literally scores of other discoveries. And the reason we don't seem to have as many discoveries these days is because people no longer really mine things.
That's right.
Right? The large operators in the world that go really deep and really dig into the stratas that we're interested in, they use machines. And you know what happens? The machines grind it down. It's all ground down, and all the minerals they need are extracted, and any finds that you may have made are either kept quiet, because if you make a find like that and it's real, guess what happens? The mine site shuts down, and they lose millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars. It's just
easier grinding it into a dust and processing it.
And there might not even be any malice aforethought. It might just be part of the process now.
There's not even a person at the front. Then the machine just goes and it has a rotating head, grinds down as it moves along, and all of the spoil gets travelled via conveyor belts out of the thing. No one sees it.
That's it. 100%. And that's where we are. This is the world. But back in the day, right, in the 19th century, and before that, because these finds don't just go back to the 19th century, people were mining. The canary in the mine was a real thing, right? People go down there, children in the mine, coal mines, any kind of mine, really. People were down there digging with shovels, spades, pickaxes, dynamite, all kinds of unsavory things, whatever it took to get it out of the ground, right? And many people were killed in the pursuit. And we know that mining goes back a long time because we found these ancient gold mines in South Africa.
That's right.
Right. So this mining business goes back a ways. Tell us. So the next piece is actually a larger piece. We're gonna start it. But what we're finding here now, we're gonna have a special. We're gonna have a special section on this. This is around stone technology, drilling technology, and Dave is gonna lead us into it. But this is one of the hardest pieces of evidence of a global culture that we have today. If you're not familiar with the subject, I urge you to educate yourselves and look at the similarities of the stoneworks, the drilling techniques, the clamping and all of that in the world that are still in existence today. It's there. It's not a hoax. It's a huge rock and a huge rock wall or a huge temple. It's there. It was built. That's nice. But the key thing here is that it was built in a way that seems to be echoed across the world, Dave.
proof of superior ancient drilling holes technology found in all four corners of the world. All kinds of stones, even the hardest ones, were drilled for architectural, ritualistic, or symbolic functions. And structural would be another one. This incredible technology was widespread in antiquity, and evidence of it can be found in all corners of the world. Prehistoric builders used stones, the toughest surfacing material found on Earth, to create perfectly round holes. I've got some images, Meki, that are cycling through, and there's some really good examples of the 2 meter long drill hole through a piece of granite. Good luck with that. Right? Honestly.
No, it's done with the copper and stone, sand, copper and sand.
Yeah, they rubbed it for a while. Yeah.
For 5,000 years we rubbed it.
5,000 years it took them to drill out. This impressive stone cutting holes in stone technique reveals our ancient ancestors were familiar with an extremely advanced technology we have long been unable to use. Large-sized holes found in ancient stone demanding engineering skills and proper cutting equipment. Today, Meki, we'd have, a hydraulic pressed machine drill tip that was like a tube of steel with teeth on the end, like a hole cutter today that we know of that would go through timber. But this would have to be carbide, it'd have to be cooled.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it would have to have constant pressure placed upon it.
It'd be powered. It would be powered.
That's the thing. It's not a people power thing. This is a machine power thing. And you'd have to apply even pressure. Now, they've found, Meki, in these drill holes, they've found the spiral shape of a cutting head throughout the length of the hole. And determined the rotational speed in which this grind has left like a rifling of the inside of that stone hole. And determined that in fact it turned so slowly and ate through the stone so quickly as to perform a spiral lengthways down through the hole at an extraordinary rate of cut speed.
Yes, that's one of the great.
Not sitting there grinding away for days.
Yeah, no, this was done at speed.
Yeah, like the metal. Sorry, like the stone was effectively soft.
Yeah, possibly. And again, we had this Colonel Fawcett's story of the potential stone softening plant. I don't know, right? But yeah, look, this is the special case, right? Stone technology, Dave, and this is a large section, so we won't be able to finish it today. We're going to pick it up next week, but let's get started, because it's fascinating stuff. And this goes right back to the beginning of Egyptology and Petrie and his comments. Lathe turned stone housewares. Now, a lathe is a piece of equipment that is, we are very familiar with, but we're not quite sure. In fact, we don't think that the Egyptians had it. In the Cairo Museum and in other museums around the world, there are examples of stoneware that were found in and around the step pyramid of Saqqara. Petrie also found pieces of similar stoneware at Giza. There are several special things about these bowls, vases, and plates. So these are household items we're talking about now, right? They showed the unmistakable tool marks of a lathe manufactured item. And I just want to say very quickly, we don't have very many stone things that we have these days. Most of the things we have are made from clay, right? Pottery things. What we're talking about now here is things that were made from solid stones. Now, lathe manufactured item. So this can easily be seen in the center of the open bowls or plates, where the angle of the cut changes rapidly, leaving a clean, narrow, and perfectly circular line made by the tip of the cutting tool, whatever that was. These bowls and stone dishes and platters are some of the finest ever found, and they are from the earliest period of ancient Egyptian civilization. Now, again, Egypt seems to have sprung into existence perfectly formed and then declined with age. They are made from a variety of materials, from soft, such as alabaster, all the way up the hardness scale to the very hard, such as granite. Working with soft stone, such as alabaster, is relatively simple compared to granite. Alabaster can be worked with primitive tools and abrasives, like sand. You keep rubbing it. The elegant workings in granite are a different matter altogether and indicate not only a consummate level of skill, but a different and perhaps much more advanced technology. There's a quote here from Petrie himself. Well, I guess you can call him the father of Egyptology. The lathe, this is the quote, the lathe appears to have been as familiar an instrument in the 4th dynasty as it is in the modern workshops. So, end quote. Stoneware such as this has not been found from any later era in Egyptian history. It seems that the skill necessary, or the skills necessary, were lost. So again, the earliest periods have this superior skill, not the later periods. Again, if we talk about linear development progression, right, it should be the other way around. We start really primitive, and we get better until we come to us the pinnacle of existence. What a lot of crop. Yeah. Now, some delicate vases are made of very brittle stone, such as schist. It's like a flint. And yet are finished, turned, and polished, and listen to this, to a flawless, paper-thin edge. An extraordinary feat of craftsmanship which we would struggle with today. At least one piece is so flawlessly turned that the entire ball, which is about 9 inches in diameter, fully hollowed out, including an undercut of the 3-inch opening at the top, balances perfectly. So the entire ball balances perfectly on a round tipped bottom. The top rests horizontally, by the way, when the ball is placed on a glass shelf. It's completely flat, right? It's machined like this. There's no variation in any of the surfaces. Okay, it balances perfectly on a round tipped bottom, no bigger than the size and shape of the tip of a hen's egg. So the whole thing is so well balanced, so well manufactured, that it has a balance point which is perfect. All right, it balances itself out perfectly, even though
it must have been lathed.
Yeah, it had to be, but according to very, very, very detailed and strict measurements, plans, and apparatus, right? You just have to do it properly. You can't do it. So, I'm gonna phone it. I'm gonna guess here and do a bit there. This is where science and art depart. So art, you have to, you do a thing, and it's right, But with science, you have to be completely accurate, right? This requires that the entire ball have a symmetrical wall thickness without any substantial error. Okay, so the entire ball must have a wall thickness without any error that can tip it over. With a base area so tiny, less than 0.15 of a square inch, any symmetry in a material as dense as granite would produce a lean in the balance of the finished piece. This kind of skill will raise the eyebrows of any machinist. Today, to produce such a piece in clay would be very impressive. In granite, it's incredible. Other piece, but it's there. That's my point. Is though it's like you can't argue with it. It's actually there, right?
Yeah.
Other pieces turned out of granite, porphyry or basalt, are completely hollowed with narrow undercut flared openings, and some even have long necks. Now, it's easy enough to create a fluted long neck, if you're working with glass or clay. Since we have yet to reproduce such pieces, it is safe to say that the techniques or machinery they employ to produce these bowls has yet to be replicated. And again, we don't do these works in stone today. We don't make them out of stone. All the stuff that we have is either plastic or it's some kind of porcelain or clay or fired. It's just too hard. Why would you, right? Again, but these people knew pottery as well, make no mistake. But they chose to do this out of granite. Again, why? They could, because they could, Dave, they could. There's a large, which is a 24-inch in diameter, a piece turned out of a schist. Schist is this other material. Shown here, we haven't got we might not have the picture up. Anyway, it is a large. It is like a large plate with a central hub, about 2 to 3 inches in diameter, with an outside rim that is in 3 areas, spaced evenly around the perimeter, is flared toward the central hub. It is a truly amazing feat of stonework. I don't know if we've got a picture for this, but I've seen it. It's just astounding.
I've seen it too. It actually looks very similar to something that might emit radio frequencies.
Yeah. They were not just a few of these, because you could think, if it's just a few that was made for the super rich, and I get it, right? It makes sense. Like Antikythera Mechanism, only one of them. There's only one of them. But no, that's not the case. Apparently, there were thousands found in and around the step pyramid. Thousands. So these were common day objects, right? So these weren't just these weren't masterpieces of craftsmen that they just made because they could, because it's so awesome.
And it's these clearly the king had it or something, right?
Yeah. These are clearly things that were made en masse and probably used by everybody. Why? Because they could, like Dave so eloquently pointed out. The Step Pyramid is believed to be the oldest stone pyramid in Egypt. Wrong.
Yeah.
So that's officially that's what's believed. The first one built. We know that's not true. Because as the Egyptians, went on in their history, the pyramids became more and more primitive, and now people believe that the Saqqara may in fact be the youngest. It seems to be the only place where these kind of stone housewares were found in quantity, although Petrie found some fragments of similar bowls at Giza, and I reckon that's where they came from, because Giza, in my opinion, as well as the Sphinx Temple complex, are the oldest places. And many of them have inscribed or scratched onto them the symbols of the earliest kings in Egypt, the pre-dynastic area monarchs from before the pharaohs. Judging by the primitive skill of the inscriptions, it seems unlikely that those signatures were made by the same craftsmen who fashioned the bowls in the first place. Perhaps they were added later by those who had somehow acquired them. Yes, of course, but this is the thing, guys. Yes, someone made these amazing things. Someone found them. Hey, they're brilliant. I'm going to scratch my name on it. Look at that. It's mine. It's the same with the Sphinx. The Sphinx, anatomically completely incorrect, tiny little head on a gigantic lion's body. You really think they made that mistake when they decided to carve this monolith? Really? Oh, Bob, you got the proportions wrong. Oh, hot dog. No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Did you know, Meki, that one of the pharaohs decided they were going to etch their stories onto all of the other things they found around? So all this perfectly smooth as glass monuments, they decided to etch their stories into them, so they appear to be of the period of when the story was being told. But once again, not true.
No. And this is the thing, right? You look at something that's beautiful, just made beautifully, right? This granite plate, it's smooth and it's perfectly balanced, but there's thousands of them, right? And then Bob comes along with his little crude little I don't know, maybe even copper little stone knife or whatever he has, and starts scratching on it his little name, right? That's it's inconceivable that the person that spent such skill on manufacturing it would then literally what amounts to a kindergartner's writing on it. It doesn't make any sense. So the question becomes then is, who made them? How? Why? Well, why? Because they could, I guess. And when? Because the thing is this: you can't date these things. You cannot really date them. That's the trouble. Kicker, right? Yeah. So look, we're rapidly running out of time, Dave. And maybe if I reckon tube drilling you can get in.
You think? All right then, tube drilling. These tubular drills vary in thickness from 1/4 inch to 5 inches in diameter, and from 1/30 to 1/5 inch thick. The smallest hole yet found in granite is 2 inch diameter. There is still a larger example where a platform of limestone rock has been dressed down by cutting it away with tube drills about 18 inches diameter. The circular grooves occasionally intersecting prove that it was done merely to remove the rock. That's W.M. Flinders Petrie, 1883. In 1996, this tube-drilled piece of granite was on display in Cairo Museum without any associated identifying information. The photo, and if we had that, we'll present that next week, clearly shows spiral grooves on the visible portions. These grooves can be seen to be of regular depth and spacing and occur in all of the holes in this piece. As the holes overlap, where were these grooves caused by abrasive slurry? They would not be expected to be so consistent. There's the music. These grooves seem to support Petrie's conclusion of jeweled points set into bronze tube drills. Look, that's the end of today's show. Shiny Side Out, episode 400.